7 years. That's how long it took. 7 years of courtrooms, custody battles, family conflict, and legal proceedings stretching across the entire lifespan of a little girl's childhood. But today, it is finally over. Nipsey Hussle's daughter, Imani Askedham, has officially inherited $11 million from her father's estate. And the court battle that stood between her and that inheritance involved a woman many are calling her stepmother. Years of family warfare. And one of the most complicated celebrity estate cases in recent hip-hop history. But yo, before you think you already know how this story ends, let me tell you right now, you don't. Because this wasn't just about money. This was about custody, about family loyalty, about who had the right to raise Nipsey's child, about who controlled one of hip-hop's most valuable posthumous estates, and about what happens when a visionary dies without every legal document in place. This case touched everything. Guardianship hearings, probate court, public scrutiny, social media drama, and years of tension between people who all claim to love the same man. And what finally brought it to a close in 2026 is a story that's more emotional, more complicated, and more powerful than any headline has been able to capture. So what's good, fam? Whether you've been following this saga from day one, or this is your first time hearing about it, stay locked in, because we're going all the way in on exactly what happened, what Imani actually inherited, what it means for her future, and why Nipsey Hussle's greatest gift to his children was never a song. It was a blueprint. Now let's talk about who Imani Askedham actually is, because too many people have had her story twisted for years. Imani was born from Nipsey Hussle's earlier relationship with a woman named Tanisha Foster. She came into this world before Nipsey began his high-profile relationship with actress Lauren London, and long before he became the global icon that millions mourned in 2019. Imani grew up knowing her father as Ermias, the man behind the legend. She knew the version of him that existed before the sold-out shows, before the Grammy nominations, before the Forbes features. She knew the version of him that was still grinding, still building, still laying the groundwork for everything that came after. And Nipsey loved that girl deeply. Anyone who followed him closely knew that. He spoke openly about wanting to create generational wealth, not just for himself, but specifically for his children. He wasn't interested in spending everything he made on appearances or luxuries. He was obsessed with ownership. He wanted to leave something behind that would still be producing value, still be feeding his family, long after he was gone. In interviews, he talked about buying back the block, about owning your masters, about understanding that real wealth isn't in your bank account, it's in what you control. He would tell anyone who would listen that the goal wasn't to get rich, the goal was to build something that your kids could inherit and grow. He was modeling a philosophy in real time, and Imani was one of the primary reasons that philosophy mattered so much to him. There's a version of Nipsey Hussle that the world saw. The rapper, the entrepreneur, the community activist, the cultural force. But behind all of that was also just a father who wanted his daughter to be taken care of. Who wanted her to never have to struggle the way he once had to struggle. Who wanted to make sure that no matter what happened to him, the foundation would still be standing. He couldn't have known how soon that foundation would be tested. He couldn't have known that his daughter would spend her entire teenage years at the center of a legal battle over the very inheritance he worked his whole life to create. But he built it anyway. And because he built it, she has it today. People forget that Nipsey was only 33 when he was killed. He had decades of building left ahead of him. The empire that people now point to as his legacy was really just the beginning of what he intended to create. He talked about expanding real estate holdings, deeper tech investments, and building economic infrastructure in Crenshaw that would rival anything in any other part of the city. He wasn't done, and Imani and Cross are now the inheritors of everything he managed to complete before that day. Then came March 31st, 2019. Nipsey Hussle was shot and killed outside his own store, the Marathon Clothing, on Slauson Avenue in Los Angeles. The community that had watched him grow from a Crenshaw kid into a global figure was devastated. Fans gathered outside the Marathon Clothing for days. Murals went up across Los Angeles almost immediately. The world mourned someone who had felt to so many people like proof that it was possible to make it out without leaving everything behind. And what he left behind was both extraordinary and legally complicated. Because here's the thing that changed everything for Imani and everyone connected to his estate. He died without a fully executed living trust. Now, for people who aren't familiar with how this works, Let me break it down. When someone passes away without a completed trust or without clear legal documents that transfer their assets directly, their estate enters what's called probate. Probate is a court-supervised legal process where a judge oversees how a deceased person's property is inventoried, debts are paid, and assets are ultimately distributed to heirs. It sounds straightforward, but in reality, probate can drag on for years, especially when the estate is large, the assets are complex, and multiple parties have competing claims. For a celebrity with a business empire, an intellectual property portfolio, real estate holdings, and grieving family members on multiple sides, probate becomes a long, slow, painful process. Every filing takes time. Every dispute extends the timeline. Every legal motion pushes the finish line further away. There's also a financial cost to probate that most people overlook. Legal fees, court costs, and administrative expenses all come out of the estate before the heirs see a single dollar. A completed living trust avoids probate entirely and transfers assets directly to beneficiaries. Nipsey had started that process but hadn't finished it. That single unfinished document is what sent everything into a 7-year court battle. The initial valuation placed his estate at approximately $11.3 million, but that number only tells part of the story, and we'll get back to why that figure is almost certainly understated. What matters right now is that the moment his estate entered probate, everything that Nipsey had built became subject to court oversight, and everyone connected to that estate became connected to a legal process that would define Imani's childhood and her future simultaneously. But here's where it gets real. Because the probate case wasn't the only legal battle that erupted after Nipsey's death. Almost simultaneously, a custody dispute emerged over Imani herself. And this is the part of the story that caused years of confusion, emotional pain, and some of the most misrepresented coverage in hip-hop media history. Nipsey's brother, Black Sam, whose legal name is Samson Askedum, stepped up immediately after his brother's murder. Black Sam had been Nipsey's closest business partner, his protector, his day-one collaborator in building the Marathon brand from the ground up. He was there before the fame, before the deals, before any of it. He knew the estate better than almost anyone. He knew what Nipsey had built, what it was worth, and what it required to keep running. So when he petitioned the court for guardianship of Imani, he wasn't acting out of malice. He was acting out of love and out of a genuine belief that he could provide Imani with the stability, resources, and environment that her father would have wanted for her. He felt a responsibility to his brother, and that responsibility extended to Nipsey's children. But Tanisha Foster, Imani's biological mother, was not about to surrender her child without a fight, and that is her right as a mother. Whatever the circumstances of her and Nipsey's relationship, whatever difficulties may have existed between her and the Askedum family, none of that changes the fundamental truth that Imani was her daughter. So what followed was a legal battle between Imani's paternal family and her biological mother. A battle that played out in courtrooms, that spilled across blogs and comment sections, and that caused years of public speculation, much of it deeply inaccurate. Both sides believed they were fighting for the right reasons. And while they were fighting, Imani was growing up, going through middle school, high school, becoming a young woman, with all of this happening in the background of her life. Now here's something important to understand about the title of this video. When people refer to the stepmother in this story, they're largely referring to the broader conflict between Imani's paternal side of the family and Tanisha Foster, framed through the lens of Nipsey's household, his legacy, and the woman who in many fans' eyes represented that household, Lauren London. And that framing, while emotionally understandable, is legally inaccurate. Lauren London was never Imani's stepmother in any legal or even traditional sense. Lauren and Nipsey were together, yes. They have a son together, Cross Askedum, who is Nipsey's younger child. But Lauren's legal involvement in the estate centered entirely on protecting Cross's interests, ensuring that her son received his rightful share of everything Nipsey left behind. Lauren and Imani's situations were separate legal tracks running through the same courthouse. The headlines that kept putting Lauren's name in the middle of Imani's custody battle were generating clicks by manufacturing a conflict that wasn't rooted in the actual court record. The real tension was between Tanisha Foster and the Askedum family, and that distinction matters because it shaped the way people understood this story incorrectly for years. Now, let's talk about Black Sam's role during all of this, because it was enormous and it deserves to be fully understood. After being named administrator of Nipsey's estate, he took on a responsibility that most people wouldn't fully appreciate from the outside. Managing a celebrity estate in probate isn't just about keeping accounts organized. It means making active decisions about how to preserve and grow a complex portfolio of assets, while legal proceedings are still ongoing. It means dealing with vendors, business partners, legal counsel, creditors, licensing requests, and a grieving community, all at the same time, all while processing your own loss. And that loss was real. This wasn't just a business transaction for Black Sam. This was his brother, his blood, the person he had built everything with. Despite all of that, Black Sam kept the Marathon Clothing running. He oversaw Marathon Studios. He worked to protect Nipsey's music catalog and the intellectual property surrounding the Nipsey Hussle brand. He navigated licensing deals, preserved business relationships, and made sure that the commercial machinery Nipsey had built didn't fall apart while the courts figured out what came next. He was on the front lines every single day, making sure that what his brother built didn't collapse under the weight of legal chaos. And through all of this, he remained publicly committed to honoring Nipsey's legacy, not just as a grieving brother, but as the steward of everything Nipsey had worked for. The real kicker, though, is what happened over time between Black Sam and Tanisha Foster. Because the years that created so much conflict also created something unexpected: the gradual possibility of resolution. Legal battles that begin as all-out wars sometimes evolve slowly and painfully into something more like negotiation. The longer a case drags on, the more everyone involved begins to understand what they're actually fighting for and what it's costing them to keep fighting. Both sides had attorneys, both sides had losses. But at the center of all of it was a little girl who needed stability more than she needed courtroom victories. A little girl who was growing up while the adults in her life were arguing over who got to be there for her. By early 2025, something shifted. After years of litigation, Black Sam and Tanisha Foster reached a custody settlement. The exact terms weren't made public in full detail, but the spirit of the agreement was clear. Imani's welfare came first, and then came the moment that nobody who had followed this story could have predicted, at least not a few years earlier. Black Sam and Tanisha Foster appeared together publicly to celebrate Imani's high school graduation. Together, not in front of a judge, not through attorneys. At a graduation, smiling. For a young woman who had spent her entire adolescence at the center of a legal storm and had come out the other side ready to step into adulthood, that image meant something. It told the world that whatever had divided them, and it was real, and it was painful, and it lasted years, had given way to something more important. The war was over, and what replaced it was a unified commitment to Imani's future. That does not happen without real sacrifice from both sides. Now fast forward to July 2026. After all of it, the years of probate proceedings, the custody hearings, the legal filings, the family tension, a Los Angeles Superior Court judge officially approved the closure of Nipsey Hussle's estate. 7 years after his murder outside the Marathon clothing store, the legal process that began with his death finally reached its conclusion. And the ruling was exactly what Nipsey's philosophy of family and generational wealth would have demanded. The estate was divided equally between his two children, Imani Asghedom, now 17 years old, and Kroos Asghedom, just 9 years old. Each received 50% of their father's estate. Both children, treated equally, provided for together. And according to court documents, that payout came in the form of both cash and other assets. The exact dollar amount paid out to each child was sealed by the court. So while the estate was estimated at around $11 million, the precise figures distributed to Imani and Kroos were kept out of the public record. What the court did confirm is that both children received their equal share and that the distribution has been completed. But let me break down for y'all what the asset side of this inheritance actually looks like in practice, because the cash is only part of it. What Imani and Kroos also received is a portfolio, a living, breathing collection of assets that will continue generating revenue for decades if managed correctly. And we know some of what that includes because Black Sam himself listed it in the court documents. According to those filings, the estate included a 2012 Chevy Suburban and interest in various businesses, including the Marathon Clothing Company and various trademarks. Now let that land for a second, because buried in the legal language of a probate filing, right next to a truck, is an ownership interest in one of the most culturally significant brands in hip-hop. That contrast tells you everything about how probate court sees assets versus how the real world values them. A court document treats a Chevy Suburban and a globally recognized brand with the same clinical language, but those two things are not the same, and the children who inherited them know the difference. Think about what the Marathon clothing actually represents. Nipsey built that store from a pop-up into a destination. It isn't just a place where people buy clothes. It is a monument to his vision, his community, and his refusal to let anyone else tell him what his neighborhood was worth. It draws customers and visitors who aren't just purchasing merchandise. They are participating in Nipsey's legacy. They are making a pilgrimage. The brand equity attached to the Marathon clothing is worth significantly more than anything a court inventory can capture on paper. And it continues growing every single year because the story behind it continues to resonate. Then there are the trademarks, the intellectual property surrounding the Nipsey Hussle name and likeness. Those trademarks cover merchandise, licensing, brand partnerships, and any commercial use of his image or name. Every time his likeness appears on a product, every time a company wants to associate itself with his brand, every time a documentary or project requires the use of his name commercially, those trademarks generate revenue. That revenue now belongs to his children. Imani and Cross own a piece of that for life, and there is no expiration date on what that could produce. Add to that Nipsey's music catalog. He independently owned his music, and he understood earlier than most of his contemporaries that controlling your masters is where real long-term wealth lives. His catalog includes Victory Lap, his Grammy-winning major label debut, plus years of mixtapes, collaborative projects, and features that stream consistently every single month across every major platform. Every stream generates royalty income. Every sync license for a film, commercial, or television show generates licensing revenue. Every anniversary of his passing, every tribute performance, every viral moment that sends fans back to his music, all of it flows back to the estate, and by extension to his children for years to come. This is why many analysts believe the $11.3 million probate valuation significantly understates the true long-term value of what Nipsey built. Probate courts value assets based on what they're worth at a specific moment, using established legal frameworks. But the real value of a music catalog, a brand, and a cultural legacy isn't captured in a court filing. It unfolds over decades, and Imani and Cross are now positioned to benefit from every year of that unfolding. Now let's talk about Lauren London's specific role and how this concluded, because this detail matters and it got almost no attention. According to court documents, Lauren London signed paperwork acknowledging receipt of the money paid out for her son Cross's share of the estate. That is a significant legal moment. It means Lauren was present, engaged, and actively involved in ensuring that Cross received exactly what he was entitled to. She wasn't a passive bystander. She was a mother protecting her child's financial future through the proper legal channels, and she did exactly that. Let's also give proper recognition to her broader role after Nipsey's death. She became the primary parent for Cross, while simultaneously becoming one of the most prominent voices in keeping Nipsey's memory alive publicly. She participated in the celebration of life, she spoke at events, worked with brands committed to honoring his legacy, and raised their son in a way that reflects the values Nipsey embodied. She never inserted herself into the custody dispute over Imani. She stayed in her lane, protected her son, and honored the man she loved. That consistency over 7 years in the face of enormous grief and relentless public scrutiny is worth acknowledging clearly. Now let's talk about where Imani actually stands today, because this part of the story deserves more than a footnote. She is 17 years old. She just graduated high school. She is entering adulthood with a financial foundation that most people her age could never imagine. And she is doing it with both sides of her family now standing behind her, rather than fighting over her. Throughout all of these years of legal proceedings, Imani largely stayed out of the spotlight. She wasn't being paraded in front of cameras. She was just a kid trying to grow up while a court case with her name on it worked its way through the system. And there is something powerful about the fact that she managed to come through all of that intact. What she does next is entirely up to her. Whether she steps into a public role connected to her father's legacy or builds something entirely her own, she now has the resources and the freedom to choose. And that choice itself, after 7 years of uncertainty, is the greatest inheritance of all. Now here's what I really want y'all to sit with. The concept of generational wealth that Nipsey preached, the ideology he articulated in interviews, in his music, in his business decisions, that wasn't just talk. He actually built it. He bought commercial real estate in South Los Angeles at a time when many people told him he should be thinking bigger or moving somewhere else. He stayed in his community deliberately, arguing that investing in Crenshaw was itself a revolutionary act. He created employment for people in his neighborhood. He partnered with tech companies, with healthcare initiatives, with community organizations. He invested in co-working spaces in the hood. He was trying to prove that economic empowerment could happen from the inside out, that you didn't have to leave your block to build something lasting, and that what you built could outlive you if you built it right. Before his death, Nipsey's major assets included the Marathon clothing store, his independently owned music catalog, commercial real estate investments in South Los Angeles, ownership stakes in various business ventures, brand partnerships with companies ranging from Puma to tech startups, and the intellectual property surrounding his name and likeness. These weren't passive assets. They were active enterprises. They required daily management, strategic decision-making, and ongoing investment. Black Sam took that responsibility seriously for 7 years. And now the children those assets were always meant to serve are officially their beneficiaries. For fans who have followed this story, the significance of this resolution goes beyond celebrity news. This is about whether a murdered father's vision for his children actually came to life. And the answer, after 7 years of doubt and difficulty, is yes. Nipsey built something real enough to survive his absence. His estate generated value through years of legal uncertainty. The structures he put in place, imperfect as they were, incomplete as his trust was at the time of his death, still produced an outcome that provided for both of his children equally. That is a testament to the strength of what he built and to the people who fought to preserve it. And here's what I want y'all to understand about the arc of this entire story. It did not end in conflict. It ended in cooperation. Black Sam and Tanisha Foster went from opposing each other in a custody courtroom to sitting together at a high school graduation. That transformation, that willingness to set aside years of legal warfare in service of a child's future, is the part of this story that deserves as much attention as any dollar figure. The legal system forced them into the same orbit, but what brought them together, what finally changed everything, was Imani herself, growing up, graduating, becoming a young woman who deserved to see the people who loved her acting like it. And now in July 2026, with the estate officially closed and the inheritance officially transferred, both Imani and Cross stand at the beginning of their lives with something extraordinary behind them, and something even more extraordinary ahead. A 17-year-old and a 9-year-old who now own pieces of businesses receive royalties from one of hip-hop's most enduring catalogs, and carry a name that carries weight, not just as a brand, but as a philosophy, a commitment to ownership, to community, to building something that lasts. Real talk, there is no version of Nipsey Hussle's legacy that is more true to who he actually was than this outcome. Not the awards, not the accolades, not the murals, not the documentaries, as meaningful as all of those things are. The truest expression of who Ermias Asghedom was is the fact that 7 years after someone took his life outside the store he built with his own hands, his daughter and his son are officially the owners of the future he always envisioned for them. That's the marathon. And after all this time, his children are finally running it. What are your thoughts on everything Imani has been through and where she stands today? Drop your comments below. And if you've been rocking with us through this one, make sure you check out the video on screen. We've got more stories just like this one that deserve to be told the right way.